It's the sound of us going live. How do you like that point? For I know that some people hear this. This is after the fact content, but how about that point right there? One of the things that I do, I'm going to come to this sort of assassin's tie, this thin white colored shirt, thin tie. That's a very assassin-like gear. I've got a black pen here. I'll come to what's going on there in a sec, but before I go to that, I want to ask you, how do you feel about that point? And the reason that I ask that question is because I'm a sponge for hand gestures. And one of the things I really love is when I see people with new, like hand gestures that I've not yet adopted. So there's two people at Rhythmia. Well, before I go there, let me show you some hand gestures I've either intentionally created or have adopted from people. So one that I've intentionally created is the holding a cigarette, right? If you're holding a cigarette, the holding a cigarette point. So like sometimes when someone's got a cigarette in their hand, they point, they have that two-finger point, and I was like, that's kind of cool. I like that sort of weird two-finger point. I'm gonna pick that up. So sometimes I'll point to something with two fingers. There's no there's nothing to that other than that I've intentionally adopted that. The next sort of version of that is not actually a hand gesture. I'm going to draw it on a piece of paper here and show it to you. This is all, by the way, before I even tell you what the heck is going on. Why is Adam live? This is crazy. He never treats us to a live on a Thursday night. Don't worry, that's coming. The second is that, well, that's not a very good example of it, but I'm going to show it to you anyhow. At some point along the way, I decided I liked the font of this weird, more complicated A. The A where it's sort of like it's a curly thing, like almost the top part of an F and then a circle. This one here on the I don't know, I guess that's the right of your screen versus this one that looks more like a Q without a long tail. The Q without a long tail, the circle with just a simple line, it's faster to write, but I don't care for that. It's not as interesting. And so if you are around me when I'm writing notes, you'll notice if you watch my handwriting, there's a bunch of interesting, to me, interesting idiosyncrasies. One of them is that my A's are always this A. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about as you see me draw that. And my R's, when I do a lowercase r, I always do a capital R. I've replaced the lowercase r with a capital R. So this is like part of how I go through the world. I'm like, that's cooler than the default. I'm going to do that. And one of the ways that shows up is I really like idiosyncratic hand gestures. So when I go to Rhythmia, there's two people. The CEO, the creator of Rhythmia, is a man named Jerry Powell, who's a very interesting guy. And then the chief medical officer, the man who's responsible for having this all be approved under the federal government of Costa Rica, is a guy named Jeff McNary. Jeff McNary has points like this. His knuckles get all bent except for one, and he'd be like, that thing over there. So I like that point. There's something about that. I'm like, yeah, I like that maybe that looks a bit like a middle finger, but like that's a weird point. But to me, that's appealing. And Jerry does a lot of this kind of gesture. He gets like the double, it's like the double kung fu chop or the double karate chop. So these are things that I just tend to pick up. Anyhow, I'm in a hotel room right now. I'm wearing a tie. I've got a nice shirt on. I'm excited to talk about this tie. I'm going to talk about ties in general. That's going to be really fun for all of us, slash no one. We've got 3 viewers, and that number is rapidly dropping, but I don't care. If you're one of these 3 viewers that are currently here, please say your name. Let's get you into the mix. Oh, it's just one viewer now. If you're one of the last remaining viewers, please let us know who you are. I'm going to drink a bit of this decaf coffee. I've spent the last week here in Philadelphia, where I've never been. And sadly, most of my experience of Philadelphia has been inside this hotel room, a ballroom downstairs, and a couple restaurants. That's okay. That's the nature of this kind of work sometimes, is that we get a sense of like a city, but we don't actually at all. And it's not to suggest I couldn't have. I could have stayed here longer and spent a bit more time, exploring Philadelphia, getting to know it, but I didn't really want to. It's been quite a busy time, and so I've been pretty clear on my decision to stay here. By the way, are you guys saying something? Like, are you guys letting me know you're here? And then the FATCA book is not actually telling me that that's the case? Because I don't want that. I want to make sure if you're commenting, I want to know about it. Let's just quickly jump over to Adam Quiney's feed. And then are there, oh, there's no comments. No one's saying anything. People aren't just like, this guy's a moron. Okay, well, that's fine. Fine. I don't need your comments to, oh, hello, Lydia. It's nice to see you. Thank you for saying hi. Hello. It's 8:40 here in Philly. I just finished, I finished all of the work for today and this week about 3 hours ago. So 5:40, 5:30 thereabouts. I'm gonna in today's live, I'm gonna talk about a few things. I'm gonna talk about where did I put this, Facebook? I wrote my description so I could read it. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I'm gonna bung you full of a lifetime of you're the bunging of a lifetime. You're gonna get bung full of life content. So that's actually gonna happen. I'm going to talk about ties in general. And look, I've got props. I've got some ties here. So I'll talk about ties and professional wear and that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk about just the nature of this kind of work that I do with my clients, like specifically this kind of work. So I'll talk about like on-site visits and how that kind of tends to go. I'm going to talk about closing our hearts in service of good, talk about having the courage to be dumb, and then how to prepare for something the right way. I'll talk about this idea like, but it matters, which I can't remember in this moment what that's about, but I'm hopeful that it comes clear. And if not, then I'll just bungle through that. So there'll be like a two-way bunging. And then finally, I'm going to talk about viewer question by Yana, who says, you know, can I talk about, I know it's 5:40 in Victoria, it's so cool. I'm going to talk about Yana's question. Yana has asked if I can talk about raising my rates. So going from charging 30K a month, one day, to 60K a month. How did that happen? What was that like? What was the process? So that's what's in front of us. Let's have a sip of coffee for it. I'm going to talk about ties first. So the first thing is that I've got a tie clip on, which I think is pretty cool, and I'm going to show it to you. This tie clip is a Brogue shoe. Look at that. That's the tie clip part, and that's, how cool is that? I have a shoe on my tie. Meta? That's crazy. This guy has a shoe on his tie. That's crazy. He's going to get his tie dirty. I just think that's cool. I like tie clips. I like paraphernalia. So when I used to smoke a lot of pot, which was we're going back a ways now, 5+ years. But back in the day when I used to smoke a lot of pot, I liked paraphernalia. And in my pub, I own a pub in my house, which I'm going to bring up a photo. This live, you'll notice, is a little more off the cuff, a little more dangerous. So here's a photo. No, turn it right. That's a photo of the pub in my house. I'm going to show you a few more shots of it so you can get a sense. So you can tell there's like some custom furniture. It's got one of these crazy brass sort of, I don't know, what do you call that? Like a banister to put your foot on. And there's sort of like the back bar. So I have a pub in my house, and I like I like beautiful decanters. I like paraphernalia. So I like having really nice stuff that pertains to whatever I like to do. I'm not the sort of person that's satisfied driving a broken down jalopy. Is that how you say that word? Jalopy? I always read that on Archie and I couldn't reason how to say it. But I like beautiful stuff surrounding me. And so for me, like tie clips, I don't just want an ugly, stupid metal bar. I want like a cool looking tie clip. Okay, so we're easing in to the tie conversation. We've started with tie clips, but we're going to go further. It's going to go even deeper. Second, look at this tie. How cool is this? Step one, it's a, okay, you know, it's a picnic table-y like tie, no big deal. But then what? It's actually a navy blue kind of felty, as though, what is the deal? And then what is this thing right here? What's he doing there? That's right, it's a piece of Lego sewn on to this tie. That's crazy. So I bought this tie in a place called Bromont in Quebec, which is the French part of Canada, which Bay and I have a deep heart on for. We love French Canada, if I can go as far as calling it that. It's from a company called Madame et Monsieur Swell. You can see it says Swell Fellow there. Maybe you can't, I don't know. I bought this tie over a year ago, and I am just so excited to get to wear it. And what I want to talk about as far as ties are concerned, I'm going to show you a few of the ties I've brought with me. First of all, it's been a treat to have any excuse to dress a little more formal than I normally do. It's not that I can't at home. That's always available to me. I don't need a reason to dress nice or to wear a tie or anything like that. But it's nice, you know. It's sort of like I don't need a reason to wear a tuxedo at home, but I'm probably not going to put one on, right? So when we have a reason, it motivates it. It's not that I require that, but it provides a convenient like opportunity to step into that. I also didn't need to dress formally. I was the only person wearing ties at this event. I don't care. That's how I'm dressing. So I'm going to show you some ties. I'm going to showcase some ties. And if that has our viewers go from a whopping 3 down to a singular person, that's fine with me. So this tie is a knit tie, which I love knit ties. They are iconic because of their square bottom. Knit ties are very nice because they bring a lovely texture into your wardrobe. They bring a sort of special kind of texture, which is a really nice thing because often a lot of people wear like, you know, a silk tie with a polyester shirt, and the texture is pretty much similar to similar. A knit tie gives you a way to create some variety. I think that's cool. The other thing that's special to me about this particular tie is that when, well, to talk about this tie, I have to tell you about the original men's club. So buckle up. And then unbuckle, because it's not going to be that wild a ride. When I was young, you know how when you were young, you did a bunch of stupid shit? And if you didn't, you know how you probably should have, so that you could sort of relate to me in this moment? Okay. So my friends and I, we're nerds. I know that's a shock. And as nerds, what we like to do is we enjoy a good scotch and we like to play Magic the Gathering. And so as we'd get together and enjoy a good scotch downtown and then come back and then play Magic the Gathering, we decided this needs a cooler name for what we're doing so that people don't think we're just a bag of nerds doing nerdy stuff, even though that's still the truth. And so what we decided is we're going to call ourselves the Original Men's Club. Not just the men's club, there's other men's club. This is the original men's club. And about 15 years ago, when we started to become men as opposed to boys, the men's club was aspirational initially. As we started to get a little older and become, you know, like men, adults, I decided, because we all kind of like sartorial stuff, I was like, guys, we need an official tie. You know, something, the criteria we were looking for was like, we need a tie that's sort of like foundational. So we don't want it to be like a crazy paisley pattern or like neon pink with penises or I don't know, whatever, something weird like that. We wanted something classic that you could wear in a whole variety of situations, but that still was iconic and ours. And so we settled on a blue, silver, navy blue, and silver stripe pattern. Classic, classic. And this is not the official men's club tie. The official men's club tie is it's diagonal. It's diagonal stripes, but same idea. And it's not wool. It is a silk tie. So it's more of a traditional kind of narrow tie, diagonal stripes. But I really like wool ties. I find them unique and they're not worn as much by men, which of course always appeals to me because not as many people have a piece of Lego on their tie. I like that uniqueness. And so I found this version of it. And so what's kind of cool in my group of friends is that some of us have a wide version, you know, a silk, traditionally normal size tie. Some of us have a narrow version. Some of us, me, has a wool version of this tie. And what's really cool is that this pattern is so classic, you can do all of these variations on that theme, and we can still kind of be doing our own thing. And so for me, one of the things that's really cool is every time I wear this tie, it's a reminder of my friends, my best friends back home. I'm going to show you some other ties, but I'm not going to talk too much about them. This is a beautiful tie that Bay bought me, a sort of fabric polka dot tie. And then we have over here a gorgeous, if I say so myself, a gorgeous floral tie. If you are a man watching this live show, there's two people watching, so it's a 50, maybe even a, I don't know what it is. It's a 75% chance that you're a man watching. Anytime you have an opportunity, if you're a man and you want to up your style game, I recommend wearing floral prints. And the reason I recommend that is every time I wear anything floral like this, I have a shirt that has a bunch of pineapples on it. Anytime I do that, people are like, I love that shirt on you. So there's something magical about men in floral prints. And my theory is that it sort of allows a man to soften a bit while actually not having to change his energy. The tie's a balance. It's like, ooh, floral, ooh, juicy. There's a man with a soft side, but he's also badass. Look at that beard. And then here's the final tie. I think this is a beautiful one. This is from a company called The Suited Man. And what this is a knit tie from wool, but it's got two things going for it. I promise we're going to stop talking about ties pretty soon, and then I'll have 0 viewers, but that's fine. Fuck them. I don't care. This tie literally is like a sweater. That's pretty cool. And one of the things I really love about a white textured tie is you can wear a white textured tie with a white shirt, and it allows you to kind of do this really interesting thing, which is you're not creating variety in terms of the color palette, you're creating variety in terms of textures. And that's something that you don't see a lot of, whether you're a woman or a man. Women generally tend to have a little more, because of the way society is structured, women have a bit more, how would I put this? Their seeing is a little bit more turned and tuned to what gains attention. And so women are more attenuated to like what draws the eye. But that doesn't have to be the case. And if you're interested in drawing the eye, if you're interested in like, wow, I'd like to like up my style game, what I would really recommend is you get a plain tie. So plain being like, it's just the color white. There's nothing spectacular about this color, but that has some kind of interesting texture, be it like this, or you can just get a knit tie, right? You can see that texture on the silver. And 0 viewers. we've cleared them all out. That's fine. People are going to watch this in syndication. It's when this goes to DVD that the real money comes in for this. So when you wear a tie like this, it really creates something unique. It allows you to stand out. And the way it stands out is what a lot of people do is they see people wearing a silk tie and they're like, man, everyone's wearing a silk tie. I need to get a louder tie. And so what they do, the way that they attempt to stand out, this is cool. I feel a little freer now that no one's watching. The thing I've needed all along was 0 viewers, 0 audience. The way most people try to stand out in the world is they witness what everyone's doing and then they try to do it louder. How do I get a silk tie that's the loudest? And I'm sure you've seen this probably while watching like NFL coverage or something like that. Like sportscasters are working the hardest to stand out while fitting in. And so that's what tends to happen. We end up with like a silk tie that's loud and ugly. And what's beautiful about this opportunity, the sort of ontological promise here, is the ability to be simultaneously subdued, but in a way that really has you stand out. So that's what a textured tie can do for you. So that's a bit of a style chat. Now I want to talk about people's relationship to ties, and then we're going to move right off of ties altogether. So if you're currently not watching and you're like, boy, I hope Adam moves off of ties pretty quickly so I can continue not watching him, don't you worry. That's going to happen. So a lot of men resent the tie. They don't like the tie. They hate the tie. They're like, I have to wear a tie. It's stupid. It's pointless. That is 100% true in terms of like sheer utility. So if the only reason you wear clothing is to protect yourself from the cold and to fit into society, ties have nothing to offer you. We could make like some arguments for like sheer edge cases, but we're not going to bother doing that. For the most part, the reason a lot of guys get frustrated with ties is because they're fucking pointless. It's like something I got to fiddle with an extra little bit of time. But what I want to draw attention to is that all art is arguably unnecessary. It's pointless. There's nothing about a piece of art. Is there any art in this hotel room with me? Here, there's a piece of art, and I'm not going to lift it up because it's going to stop my. I've carefully poised my power cord here. If I move the phone, I'll disturb the delicate bird. But like all art is without. It's not efficient, right? Like if we looked at a painting that someone had made and we were like, that's inefficient, that's not productive, we'd be right, but that's not the point of art. And your clothing, you don't have to take on the way you dress this way. Your clothing does not have to be a reflection of your art. But I would assert the opportunity, or part of the opportunity in life, is for all of how you express yourself to be part of your art. One way or another, you're going to choose either a black t-shirt or a white t-shirt. So why not engage with that as though it's art? And you could make arguments that would be very compelling. Well, that's a decision I have to make, and then I have less capacity for a decision to make later on. You could also not have it really be any kind of decision. You just reach for whatever's there, and that gets to be your art. But never mind that. So what happens for men who tend to be very purpose driven and like, this is the path, this is the thing I want to do, is that they get frustrated because the tie, a fundamentally purposeless part of dressing yourself, gets in the way of that purpose. If, however, your commitment is to create art in the world, to create more of your expression in the world, then the tie is a beautiful opportunity. As men, there's not a lot of stuff we get to play with. We don't have the luxury that women do to like engage with our style, with our fashion, to like treat ourselves like a canvas and do a lot of stuff. We get like a tie, we get the collared shirt, we get maybe a blazer, maybe what do I have here? Maybe like some pocket squares, if we're fortunate, if we're that way inclined, and that's about it. And so the tie gets to be this really cool place where you get to like actually express some of who you are. How do I actually want to show up? What is the energy I want to put into the world? What is the art that I want to create? What do I want to gift people that notice me as I walk by them? This is not the right way to show up. It's just an opportunity. If we start to relate to the world through that lens, then life becomes a little more exciting. It's a little more interesting because we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. I get to like wear this in such a way that it might cause someone to inquire about something, or it might have that person be like, that's really cool. I want to know more about that. So for me, that's the opportunity of a tie. It's never going to be particularly efficient, just like a piece of art in a hotel room is never going to be particularly efficient, because that's not what art is for. If you want efficiency, leave your walls bare. But a life lived efficiently starts, eats, makes kids, makes sure the kids eat, dies. That's an efficient life. That's probably not what you're really here for. It's okay to do that. You can make your life about that, but you're kind of missing the opportunity that consciousness represents, right? The gift of our consciousness is the opportunity to step up and out of a wholly purely efficient life and actually create something a bit different, a little more rewarding. Okay, so I've talked about ties. I did that. Now I'm going to talk about this client visit. So the context of me being in Philly is that I have a client. One of the things I offer a couple of things when I work with people, and I think this might be relevant because Jan has asked me to speak to my rates. The point where I raised my rates from 30K to 60K, which wasn't a single jump, by the way, but nevertheless, like, she wanted me to talk about that. And part of what I offer these days at my rates is if clients want, One, I will include a trip to go and sit in ceremony with me in ayahuasca. So that's just included as part of our work together. And sometimes these days it's with if they're it costs a little bit more to do this, but what I'll do is I'll come and spend a week with them, witnessing them in their process, witnessing them working with their teams, and working with each member of their team. So that's what I'm down here for. This is what I've been doing over this past week is I've been working with a client, sitting with him, watching how things go as he works with his team, and then meeting with each of his team members and coaching them, giving each of them a coaching conversation. And in addition to all that, I've also been leading some conversation for them on the concept of ontological leadership. So I've been doing a bit of speaking, and then they've been doing a bunch of their work over the course of this week. And then at the end of that, today I've just finished 6 sessions in a row. Talking about a mammoth set of sessions, 6 sessions in a row where I've coached every single person of his senior team that's been here. And so I want to share a little bit about what's like, how that's gone, what's come up for me, what I've noticed, all of that. And then, am I going to share? What else am I going to share? I'll talk about, yeah, like how that matters, how that's relevant, what I've noticed by virtue of doing this work. And like I'll talk a little bit about like some of my fears that have shown up and how I've worked with those. So I've known like this meeting's been on the books for about 2 months. I need to schedule myself, especially to take a month away. During this time, I'm devoted to this client. And I have a bunch of clients. I have about 8 to 10 at any given time. Typically, 10 is a bit over full, and 8, probably 6 to 8 is about the sweet spot. But during this week, I'm here for my one client. That's what I'm here for. And so we've planned this out for about 2 months. It's been on my calendar and it's been sitting there. And for the first month leading into it, I just was like, whatever, that's off in the future. I've had tons of stuff on the go, things to occupy my time, stuff I've been busy with. The Forge has been like, the Forge is at kind of like the point where it really starts to pick up speed. And so that's been like plenty busy for us. Forge starts in September. So the September to October, that's all that's going on. It is really like, we don't plan anything else. We're like holding that space. October, the start of October, that's when we're doing our work to kind of like cause the Forge to begin to take off. So that's like the plane's been on the runway and it's been picking up speed. Now we're getting it up off. Once you're up off the runway and like accelerating, you're kind of like, okay, we're getting to cruising altitude. So the Forge is it's just leveling off. And so the last 2 weeks prior to today is when I've been able to start to be like, fuck, I've got this thing going on. Like I got a thing that's happening that I need to do something about. Or do I? I'm not really sure. Yeah, Tara, you get it. Tara gets it. She's in the Forge with us. So about 2 weeks ago was when really this trip kind of showed up on my radar. And I was like, oh, that's happening in 2 weeks. What do I do? What do I need to do about this? And my immediate reaction to that was, obviously, I need to prepare a fuck ton. I need to prepare a lot. I need to get my head into the books and do stuff. I should have like a whole layout, blah, blah, blah. And what happened was nothing. So 2 weeks out, fear. I need to do a bunch of preparation and then like nothing else. And historically, what would happen is a bunch of me avoiding looking at that fear, right? So the fear says, dude, you should, like, this client matters, as all of my clients do. I care about them, and we're both committed to each other in a big way, right? So it matters. I care about the work I do. And historically, I would have a great deal of fear about this event coming up in 2 weeks, and I'd be like, I need to do stuff, and I would carve out time. What I did this time was, okay, I'm gonna like look forward 2 weeks. I've got a bit of space. I'm gonna block that off, and I'll call this like prepare a presentation, whatever. And then I'm not gonna do anything for the rest of this week. It doesn't mean my fear went away. My fear was plenty loud. My fear was like, hey, have you thought about this? You know that's coming up. You should do something about it. Oh, you're stupid. You're ugly too. My fear's mean. Ah. What I've done, what's different from how historically or like 10 years ago what would happen is 10 years ago, my fear would be yapping in my ear and I'd be reacting to it. It would say, you haven't done enough. And I'd go, good point. I need to do more. And I would do more. Now what happens is my fear's like, you haven't done enough. And I go, hey, buddy, I haven't seen you in the last 10 minutes. My fear's here. What's up, dude? My fear's like, you should listen to me and do a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I feel that I kind of want to respond to that, but I'm going to just let you be here. He's like, really? Can you believe this guy? Just kind of, if you're listening to this after the fact, my hand is my fear and it's looking at me as though a funny snake. So my fear wants to keep yapping in my ear. And instead, what I do is like, okay, I hear it. I notice it. I hear it when it shows up, but I'm just going to allow it to be. And if I can let my fear be as opposed to reacting to it, then my fear eventually gets bored of me. It starts to like let me be and goes off over there to like bother someone else, presumably. So the first week of the 2 weeks prior to me coming down here, that's what it looked like. Then in some ways it was like, okay, I've planned for something next week. And then I got to the week before coming down here. And what happened in the week prior to coming down here is that I looked and I was like, oh, it's Tuesday. And look, I've got an hour and a half dedicated to like preparing for this. And so I was like, okay. And I grabbed my coffee and I sat down and I was like, what do I need to do? And I realized I don't really know. I've got a sense from my client about like where his team's at. And I know that there's going to be initially a bunch of conversation before I open my mouth where his team are doing some of their work. So the structure of how this all went was like they were going to do the first half of the day, they were going to do some of their own work, work through some of their agenda without me as a team. And then I would talk about leadership. And then the next day I was going to have 3 hours. So I was like, boy, I don't know what I need to prepare. I need to actually see this team in action. That's what I need. Like I could create stuff and it might not be a bad idea to have something available, but I need to get a sense of how this team's working together. Are they dysfunctional? Are they functional? Are they just screaming at each other? Okay, well, if that's the case, I would do this. But if not, I probably wouldn't. What do I do? So what happened for me was that I concluded, I don't know. I don't know what there is to do. And further, I don't want to spend a lot of energy trying to figure that out. I don't want to solve for this team. I don't want to plan for every contingency. And what happened at this point on a Tuesday, Monday, I flew down here. So, right, 6 days before flying down here was that I realized I'm probably not going to do that much to prepare because I trust myself. I trust, a decade and change worth of work. I trust my ability to like be with people and in the moment to distinguish what's going on. And I trust my willingness to let people know that that's what's happening. And then my fear was like, fuck you, no, you don't. My fear was like, that's bullshit. That's nuts. So my fear had a bunch of stuff to say about this idea that this belief, this experience I had of trusting myself. And it was really compelling. My fear talks a good game because just like I used to be a lawyer, so too did my fear. So my fear is really effective at arguing. And the game became, can I acknowledge my fears there, acknowledge his brilliance, but actually not really engage with them? Because what my fear wants me to do is either react to him, do what he's telling me to do. You're right. I need to prepare a whole bunch. I should plan for every single contingency and make the master flow chart. Or the second thing he wants me to do is argue with him. You're wrong. Well, here's why I'm not wrong. Well, but that doesn't make sense. Well, but blah, blah, blah. And that just gets me engaged, right? It stops me from just living my life for the next 6 days and has me engaged in a fear-based conversation. How do I know it's fear-based? Because it's with my fucking fear. If you're arguing with your fear, that's a fear-based conversation. Very simple. How do I know that it's fear-based? Because you're arguing with your fear. You're trying to prove your fear wrong. It wouldn't be fear-based if it wasn't engaged with your fear. I'm taking my socks off. That's happening. That's what happens on a late night live that doesn't happen the rest of the time. You guys are getting privy to some pretty sexy shit. So Wednesday, that's Tuesday. Wednesday, I also have a block of time laid out, and I'm like, I really should plan some stuff out. And so I sit down, and Wednesday, I'm like, okay, I probably should have at least something to fall back on. You know, I trust myself, but just in case, you know, it's nice to have a safety net. And so I got really clear, like, okay, well, the stuff I could probably do that would serve no matter what is talk about essence, you know, the essential nature of who we are, our shadow, like how does our light lead to our shadow? I'll maybe do that. And then beyond that, I think I'm gonna just I could really feel like my truth was I really want to see where I'm led with these people rather than having something planned. And that doesn't mean I couldn't have planned a backup, right? I really want to see where I'm led, but just in case, I will do this. But as I plugged into my truth, what I really felt was I really want to see where I'm led by these people. I don't want to. I don't want to create a backup. I would create one because I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to show up looking like a bozo, and as long as I have a backup, that won't happen. That's all rooted in fear, right? And my truth in this moment, as I slowed down and breathed, was like, I actually really trust myself. And I've been in this game for a long time. I know this work. So I'm going to practice. And the practice was I'm going to practice. All right, I'm going to write a little bit out essence, light, shadow, survival mechanism, that sort of stuff. Did that. And now I'm going to let the rest be. And so the rest of this week, leading into to this week we're in, like last week, I guess, was a lot of at times me feeling like at peace and then being afraid because I felt at peace. Ugh, I feel very relaxed. Is that okay? I should probably not feel so relaxed. I should be worried about this on-site visit I'm going to do. Oh, shit. And so that was just ongoing over the course of this past week. And I'll say, I think this last week, Bay and I were finishing up our dieta from the last time we sat with Mother Ayahuasca, which meant I wasn't drinking. But boy, did I want to. I really wanted to reach for a beverage and like cram it down my throat so I could like, yeah, you know, numb myself. There's a pleasing nature to the numbingness. Sidebar, I really wish there was a mini bar here. So coming into this week, a couple things were going on for me. The first was I was really excited to get to wear ties. I was really excited to get to dress nicely. The second was I was nervous about my clients, like people. You know, I was going to meet them. What were they going to think about me? Were they going to think I was a dork? Were they going to think I was sucky? How did they feel? And then the third was this ongoing fear. You didn't prepare enough. You're an imposter. Who the fuck do you think you are? Why didn't you do anything? You know, that version, right? It's hip to call that imposter syndrome. And what we're trained to do with imposter syndrome is like argue with it, rationalize. Here's why I'm not an imposter. You know what you're doing when you argue with your fear about why you're not the thing your fear is telling you is? You're in a fear-based conversation. If your fear wasn't telling you you're an imposter, then you wouldn't be arguing with it. And therefore, any argument you're engaged in with your fear is a fear-based conversation. So my fear was really working to pull me into that. Dude, get over here. Because if you at least are in an argument with your fear about not being an imposter, being an imposter, that like alleviates some of the fear. It lets you not really feel it. The truth was, on some level, I'm totally imposter. I'm totally an imposter. My client is working in like crazy. He's a CTO of a company that's up to like crazy stuff. I don't know any of his stuff. And as I sat in this first day looking at the stuff they're working on, I don't have a fucking clue what they're talking about. They're using they love acronyms, it seems, in this company. And I don't know what any of those mean. So all that's going on for me. And my job really consistently throughout this week has been to allow myself to be afraid, not make it meaningful, whatever my fear has to say, and then just show up and be with people the way they are. I'm going to talk more about what that means, but I'm going to go over here and grab my water bottle before I do. So the topic is like, what does it mean to be with people exactly as they are? If I'm afraid that I'm an imposter and might look stupid, and the person showing up in front of me is very brilliant and I can't follow anything they're saying, then what I feel compelled to do from my fear is act as though I understand them. What I feel compelled to do from my fear is work really hard to follow them. What I feel compelled to do from my fear is check out because I can't really follow it. I don't know. But what my fear tells me absolutely not to do is tell the person, I don't have a fucking clue what you're saying. I don't follow. I'm not sure that I understand. What do you mean? That didn't make sense to me. And then when they explain, yeah, it still didn't make any sense to me. And when they explain a third time, I'm sorry, I'm really missing this. It's not clear to me what you actually want. Being willing to say that over and over and over again. That's the hard part about coaching. And that's what the vast majority of coaches are unwilling to lean into. What the vast majority of coaches and leaders attempt to do is be really good at coaching, be really good at leadership, so that they don't have to go there. If I'm really good at coaching, I'll ask a powerful question when someone is talking a bunch of nonsense. And that way it'll like snap the person into whatever. No, it won't. The gift you have as a coach, the gift you have as a leader is in your courage to look like a fucking moron. Your courage to look like a bozo, to not have an idea about what you're doing, and to be willing to offer that like the gift it is to the person in front of you. And so a lot of this week has been kind of twofold. On the one part, it's been trusting the expertise I am. I don't know this group of people. I don't know their world. I'm far, far out of the software game. I have a rough, very rudimentary, like I can code, but I'm not able to do what they're doing. So I'm not an expert in their domain, but I am in my domain. I understand leadership. I understand transformation. I understand what allows someone to enter the chrysalis and then pull through it and create transformation. I get that, even if I'm dumb about the stuff they're talking about. So that's the first part, is really trusting that part of myself, the part of myself that's actually pretty smart, that actually knows some stuff. And then the second part of that trust is the complete polar opposite. It's the willingness for me to trust the part of me that's like, I'm a dum dum and I don't know at all what you're saying. To be willing to share with them when I don't have any idea, when I'm completely lost, and to like hold that like it's not a bad thing. It's not something I need to overcome. It's a gift I need to offer them in the moment. Yeah, it's not clear to me. And the reason that that's been my job is because if, as they share with me what they're trying to create, if I can't understand it, I'm pretty much willing to bet you that none of the people around them are able to understand it either. Because I'm willing to ask that question, hey, I feel stupid and I still don't get it after asking you 3 times to explain it. I'm willing to do that. The rest of the world's probably willing to ask once. So if I don't understand what they're saying, there's no way that the rest of the world has any hope. And so that's the gift I have to offer them, trusting what I'm feeling, trusting this experience of like, hey, I feel kind of stupid, but I got to bring this to you because I don't think anyone else is doing this. I think from their feeling stupid, they're trying to make you feel like you are understood or just nodding their head and glazing over or whatever. So that's been a confronting week. You know, it's been a week of like, let me have a sip of water for this. It's been a week of like continually being confronted by my not enoughness, the fear that I have that I'm not enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't have the right answer, I'm not posh enough, I'm not polished enough, you know, whatever. And rather than do all of the reactive stuff that would alleviate that fear, argue with it, convince myself that I am as polished as I need to be, dress even better than I'm already dressed, which is saying something, you know, rather than doing any of that stuff or relying on it. Just want to put this tie clip back on because I'm not going to get to wear it for a while now. Yeah, that's feeling good. Rather than do any of that stuff, trust what's showing up for me. This is part of the reason why coaching is such a challenge. Coaching and leadership are such challenging professions because the world around us teaches us whatever the problem is, learn the skills to make the problem go away. And in coaching and leadership, we actually, the heart of transformation, I should say in transformational coaching and leadership, the heart of transformation is we go into the heart of what's showing up for you. You feel stupid? Share that. Bring that into the space like a gift, as opposed to doing a bunch of stuff to make you feeling stupid go away. So you never have to feel stupid again. So it's been like a beautiful week, really profound, because I've been my client and his people they've been providing me all of this opportunity to like step further up, to step into a bigger game where I don't resolve this, but I actually am constantly being bombarded with like, you're not enough, whatever. Okay. So that's good. I said that. That was awesome. So that's really like having the courage to be dumb. And in this line of work with this group of people, I've noticed like two big trends. The first is like it's really demanded a lot of a willingness to look, feel, appear, and possibly even just be stupid on my part without convincing myself, like, you know, without all those mental gymnastics to be like, don't worry, Adam, you're not that, to set that entirely aside. Yeah, you might be. Maybe that's a gift, you know, like, and what I'm doing, I want to be clear, is I'm actually practicing trusting my brilliance when I don't argue with that. Like, if my fear tells me, hey, you might look stupid if you ask a third time for them to explain this because you don't get it, my fear is like, you might look stupid. If I have to then argue with my fear and say, here's why I don't look stupid, that's not actually trusting your brilliance, my brilliance. To trust my brilliance, like if I really trusted that actually I'm brilliant just as I am, I don't have to do anything to make that the truth or whatever. I can just allow that to 100% be as it is, then there's no argument to be made. You know, if you really trusted you were a generous person and then someone showed up and was like, you're selfish, you'd be like, have a good day. You wouldn't need to engage with them because you're like, I don't, whatever. Like, okay, I don't care. I know that I'm not, so it's all good. Right. But what our fear does is it reveals to us the places where we don't actually trust that about ourselves. Our fear brings us to a moment of confrontation with opportunities where there's a deeper practice to take on. And so that's what was happening a lot this week was the opportunity to practice not just intellectually trusting it, but to actually practice with my being, practice with the actions I took of being in trust of my brilliance. And so again, the way that would be borne out was, okay, I'm feeling dumb, but I'm going to trust I'm not. So I'm going to ask a fourth time. I don't think I'm getting this. And now I'm starting to think maybe it's not actually me. Like, is this a common experience you have where you keep explaining something to someone and they keep not getting it? Is that familiar for you? And if they're like, yeah, yeah, kind of, yeah. Okay, we're on to something. So when you're working with really smart people, you got to have the courage to be willing to be dumb. And this applies to literally any quality you want to come up with. If you have been one of the very brilliant people to read Who Do You Think You Are? If you go through that book and you look up any of those qualities, presence, radiance, generosity, spirit, divinity, what else? Brilliance, wisdom, adventure, any of that stuff. For any of those things, if you want to work with people that are like adventure, then you have to be willing. Part of your call forward is a willingness to be judged as unadventurous. What would boring? To be judged as boring, mundane, static, safe. If you want to work with generosity, then you have to be willing. If you're going to really commit to working with people that bring a generous nature to the world, you're going to need to be willing to have them perceive you, but more importantly, for you to possibly engage with the risk that you might be perceived as selfish, because it's the only way we can kind of bring all of the full expanse of our gifts to the table. It's been a really challenging week. Can I know there's only 3 people here. Lydia, Tara, if you're still here, thank you so much. But can any of the two, any of the 2 of you just say yes, or like give me a thumbs up or a heart or something, so that I'm like, this doesn't feel quite so lonely. Because if you want to have a massive audience, you got to be willing to have an audience of 2 or 1 or 0, which I am. But please give me a heart or something, so I'm just like, what's up? It'll be more fun for all of us too. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about raising rates, and I notice I've been going for 51 minutes. And I'm getting tired. Oh yeah, Tara, you're the best. Thank you for your giant check mark. I'm gonna get. You know what? You're getting a big giant heart back. Boom. I'm a little bit tired, so I'm going to go to Yana's question about rates, and I think we'll probably wind down there. I'm flying back home tomorrow, so it's unlikely I'll do a live tomorrow at 10 a.m., but that's okay. I'm still going to nail this question. So, Yana, current member of the Forge, says, Dear Adam, she doesn't say that, but she says, I would love to hear about your experience of raising your rates from 30 to 60K, from 30K to 60K, and what that brought up for you mentally, but also practically. Like, are the prospective clients different now compared to when you charged less? How did your approach to attracting those clients change, if at all? And how about the delivery of the work or the marketing efforts or anything at all? So Yana is, hello, Maria, and thank you. I'm grateful for you too. I appreciate that. So Yana's asking, can I talk, about this transition? What was the difference that made? So I'm going to talk first about I can yawn first. There we go. Get that out of my system. The circumstances that led to that increase in rates, and then I'll talk about like what that drove up. So the circumstances at the time, initially I was charging 20K and 30K. 20K for 6 months of work, 30K for a year of work. And what I was doing, right? The phenomenology of my life. There's the ontology of my life, which is how am I relating to and experiencing what's happening in my life? And then there's the phenomenology, which is what actually is the content of my life? What is the circumstances? I live in Victoria. That's a phenomena of my life. Victoria's a pile of shit. That's an ontological aspect of my life, how I'm relating to the phenomena showing up in my life. Sidebar, Victoria rules. The ontological relationship I have, I'm in Philadelphia, Andrew, and hello. The ontological relationship I have to where I live is very empowered. I love Victoria, and I highly recommend if you've never been there that you get your ass over there and say hi to me. It's amazing, and you will fall in love with my hometown immediately. I cannot advocate for it enough. You will want to move there. And then you'll be like, fuck, it's crazy expensive here. And I'll go, I know, brother, sister, what's up with that? So at this point in my life, I've probably been coaching for, we'll say about roughly 7 years. I've finished working with Accomplishment Coaching, which is the coach training program. It's the only coach training program I recommend you consider if you've never taken any coach training and you're interested in this work. I'm going to put you in that program. I'm going to recommend it from soup to nuts. It's the best. I share that from a place of bias. I stayed in their work for 5 years. I led their work for about 5 years. You can say, well, he's biased. Of course he's going to approve that. Absolutely. And I would counter and say, yeah, and if you vibe with me, my bias is a good thing, right? If you're like, this guy's cool, he gets it, great. From my getting it, that's what I'd recommend to you. So I just finished, maybe not just, I've probably been about 2 years out of doing their work. I'd led their work for 5 years, then I moved on from it. And I'd moved on from that to work with a community, a group of people. Andrew, it's not that I don't want to answer your question. It's just I spent the first half hour, maybe 45 minutes of this conversation talking about why I'm in Philly. So you have to go back and watch it after the fact. So from Accomplishment Coaching, AC's work, I moved into a man named Rich Litvin's sphere. And Rich Litvin is one of two authors, shake my table here, two authors who wrote a brilliant book on coaching called The Prosperous Coach. And The Prosperous Coach is a seminal piece of work on how to create clients as a coach. It's highly regarded and deserves to be that way. And Bay and I started to come to Rich Litvin's world. Excuse me, got some hiccups. And as we did so, we very quickly started to join his inner circle. And then we started to lead at his public intensives. And so where we kind of enter this story is that I've been leading Rich's public intensives for about 2 years. And at this point, I'm now leading the leadership team. So he runs these public intensives for about 150 people at a time. And Rich is the celebrity. People are there to see Rich. And there's a leadership team of maybe about 40 people, and I'm the one leading them. I'm developing their leadership. It's worth mentioning at this point that prior to me stepping into being the one, I was partnering with a woman who you may have heard of named Kendra Kunov, who's also a coach deep in her work and a very dear friend of mine. She does more embodiment work, feminine typically work, but some masculine work. But prior to me joining Kendra and us taking on the leadership team this way, the way that the leadership team was structured was you went and joined the leadership team, and what you did was you were of service. I want to talk about what that means. To be of service has you can feel it, right? There's an element of humility, of like selflessness. I will gift myself to you in service. I'm here for you. But being there for someone is fucking safe, right? I'm here for you as opposed to being here with you. You can be there for someone without having to do any of your own work. To be there with someone requires you move out of the way anything that's in the way of you being there with them. And so the way this initially got created was that I was sitting with Kendra in one of these groups called 4PC, the top 4% coaches in the world. That's a misnomer, but I'm not going to go into that. I was sitting with Kendra and I was talking to her and I was saying, man, you know, it's cool that we have these leadership teams for like these public intensives with all these coaches, but it's too bad because there's this real opportunity to have those team, like that leadership team, actually be an opportunity to develop their leadership. And instead, what's happening is they're kind of showing up for other people, but they don't have to do that much work. There's nothing required of them. It's safe. And after that conversation with Kendra, she sent me an email and said, hey, do you want to come join me? I'm leading this team. Would you like to partner with me on that? And I was like, hell yes. So what happened was I joined this team and we upended everything. Up until this point, what it meant to be on the leadership team was like, it was kind of this cool thing you were a part of. It was basically an elite group you got to be a member of. You showed up, you taught, You kind of held some space for people. You ran some microphones up to them for like an hour or two, but it wasn't really a big deal. And you were like, of service. I'm here for you. Let me know if you want any support, right? Hopefully you can hear in that the charity, the generosity, as well as the shadow, the arrogance. There's an arrogance to that. And hopefully you can get this, like what I'm pointing to. The arrogance comes from like, I'm here for you because you require some support. Notice like the angle of my camera, right? I'm pointing down to you. You need my support. That's what I'm here for. So these leadership teams had been created this way, and there was like this arrogance that was a shadow. People couldn't see it. So I show up and I'm like, yo, the opportunity, the possibility of this is that people come onto the leadership team and they're confronted with the opportunity to grow their leadership. People did not like that. People had a reaction to it as they ought to, because now we're confronting them instead of letting them hang out up here where it's nice and safe and they're for a service of they're serving these morons down here. Now, I'm not saying that they related to them as morons, although some of them did. I certainly would have, absent having worked for 5 years at the most rigorous training program I can recommend to you. But there is like that safety of being up here above them. And so I'm showing up to these leadership teams and I'm really calling people out and forward. I'm calling them up. People are like, oh, I'm really spent. So can you, instead of like talking to me, can you just go around the circle? And then what would happen was people like, no worries at all. Thank you for acknowledging you're spent, and then move on. And then I'd go, well, hang on a minute. Like, we can't do that, because we're inviting everyone in this room, even though they're spent, to step forward and to actually lean further in beyond their existing capacity. So if we have a member of our leadership team just say, hey, I'm good, stop, when they're at capacity but not destroyed, they don't occur wrecked, their makeup's perfect, they're completely put together, we can't let that person, we can't allow this leader to get away with that. Like that, how the leader's being is how the team is being, and we're actually asking the team to step forward further, and then we're inviting this person here too, right? So I was a bit of a grenade, you know. I believe a grenade for the forces of good for deepening leadership, but it was confronting. So as this is going on in the Rich Living community, a bunch of things are happening. One, some people are kind of a fuck you to this. You know, there was people that had been invited, for example, by Rich to join the leadership team, and then as I and Kendra would sort of like put the criteria in front of them, they'd be like, well, I'm not going to answer that question because that's a waste of my time and blah, blah, blah. And we'd be like, well, you know, we're asking you to take a look and see how you're going to get in your way. And they're like, well, yeah, but I'm not. Why would I get in my own way? I'm doing my work. We're like, okay, well, the point of this work is that we're always going to be at a risk of our shadow. Like our ego gets us. And as soon as we believe that our ego will no longer get us, that's how it gets us. So are you actually interested in that? Like, is that the conversation you're interested in meeting us in? And the people, these people for which they weren't, they would be like, no, I don't want that. That's pointless. Okay, great. So we were basically creating a new context to invite people into that was different than the old one. The old one is you figured it out and now you're going to serve these other people. The new context was, yo, you haven't figured it out. You're going to engage with your work even more so than these people. You're going to show up and be willing to be confronted by your shadow, your ego, by what you don't want to look at, to an even higher gradient than the people below, the people you're here to serve. So that's the context in which I'm now speaking to how my rates went. So I feel that's really important. In the context of all of that, I started to have a lot of people come to me and be like, hey, I'd like to work with you. And the reason for that is that what I was standing for was completely different than the vast majority of what was happening at these events. The vast majority of what was happening at these events was a lot of collusion, a lot of you're great, it's all fine and good, let me help you also feel that it's all fine and good, placating, yeah, I agree that person's a jerk. You shouldn't have to feel bad about that, right? Like, not a lot of strong stand for people, not a lot of missing rigor. It was mostly love, no rigor, which ends up being toothless. It's satisfying for a while, especially when we come from a corporate world that is all rigor, no love. But neither of those really works, right? All rigor, no love is just heartless. And after a while, we're like, I'm one giant callus. This isn't working for me. And then so we leave that and we come all the way to this kind of coaching world that's all love, no rigor. And we're like, oh, it feels so good. It's like sitting in a hot tub. Oh. And then after a while, you're like, it's like sitting in a hot tub, except I'm paying a bunch of money for it. I could take one of my monthly payments and buy a hot tub. I'm going to do that. And then we just sit in the hot tub. And yeah, we don't necessarily transform, but it's way easier. It's nicer. We're in the hot tub. It's nice to be in a hot tub. Sidebar, hot tubs rule. I recommend you get one. So I'm standing for something different, which is the dance, the polarity of love and rigor, which is what is required for real transformation. And I'm standing for the capacity having that capacity developed in each of us to be able to notice our bias and to work with it so that whatever the client needs in the moment, we can flex and be fluid with. The only way that that can happen is for us to work with coaches that can bring that to ourselves. And frankly, there just wasn't very much of that going on in this, in spite of the fact that, to Rich's credit, he was a magnet. He's so inspiring. He brought so many people here. He wasn't actually very deep in that particular aspect of the work. And so there tend to be a lot of people coming to Bay and I. And so when I got to the point where around this time I was charging 30K for a year, 20K for 6 months, and I reached the point where I just had so many people approaching me that I was like, I am going after the next 3 people hire me at 30K a year, I'm going to raise my rates to 50K. And that was quite frightening. It was a very edgy thing to even consider, but I'd done this enough times. I was like, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to do it. And I declared it to my coach, after the next 3 people, I'm raising my rates, end of story. I think this is a great way to practice as a coach. What I want to emphasize is there was a clear what, raise my rates from 30K to 50K a year, clear what, and a clear by when. I'm going to do it after 3 people hire me. You could be even more powerful. I could be like, I'm going to do this in 3 months' time because I'm going to make damn sure I'm going to do everything I need to do to have 3 people hire me. But all the same, let's not get bogged down into that. A what, by when. And then I brought it to my coach. I declared it out loud, and then she could hold me accountable to that result. What a lot of coaches do is they resist raising their rates because they're afraid, ultimately, they're afraid they'll get a no. And they hide behind stuff like, well, I'm not trained enough, so I'll start charging this rate once I've graduated. Okay, fine. Then they graduate and they charge that rate for the next 20 years. That's okay too. But what I find much more powerful is to like create a clear metric you're going towards and have that happen. So anyhow, this is a much larger conversation where I could talk about like creating metrics, declarations, stuff like that as coaches. For me, at this point, I was pretty reliable to create clients. I had a lot of people coming from the Rich Live In world. What's, I think, more interesting, and by the way, 4 viewers, I'd love to hear anything from you. Anything that's showing up. 5 viewers now. Oh shit, we're blowing up. We're infinitely higher than we were an hour ago where we had 0 viewers. I'd just love to hear anything that's resonating for you or anything in particular you're listening for, or like, oh, I hope you can answer this, or I hope you get to this. That'd be super helpful for me as we go through this. So I'd raise my rates. I got hired 3 times and I was like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm raising my rates to 50K. And it was largely that simple. I didn't start marketing myself any differently because at this point in the game, I wasn't doing a lot of like, I wasn't trying to target people that could pay me that much money. All I was doing was writing. I have a daily writing practice which by the way, I'm bringing back, and I got another book in the works, so get excited for that. I'm going to start posting a lot more. But I had a daily writing practice where every day I'd get up and I would sit down and I'd write for an hour. And often I would write utter bullshit, garbage, and I would publish it. That was the practice. Write for an hour, whatever gets written, out it goes. Here you go, Facebook. So if you go back around this time, you'll see there's like terrible rap songs posted and like gibberish. And some of it's like brilliant gibberish. It's hilarious. Another is really profound post. Another is like, yeah, it's a good post, but he wrote way too much. It's all there. So thank you, Tara. Excited noise is great. That is actually helpful, more so than you realize, because it tells me you're here. So I appreciate you and that. So I raised those rates. I didn't do anything any different. I didn't feel called to, and I wasn't interested in it. I was mostly raising my rates because at this point I was able to fill my practice at 30K. You know, those 3 people coming in, I was like, oh yeah, my practice is full. This is pretty easy. I'm just going to raise the rate. Now, what happened next was 2 things. One, I left the Rich Litvin community. So at this point, one of the things that had become comfortable and maybe even cushy was that I was really able to generate a lot of clients through the Rich Litvin community. The gift, I'm going to call it, of ontological work and the depth that that provides access to really stood in stark contrast to what was being taught at Prosperous. I think now they're called Rich Litvin Intensives, and like the people showing up there. So what was happening was like there's people showing up with strategies, right? NLP. NLP is a strategy. Oh, you're scared of this? Touch your head this way, take a coffee cup, and then let this be the energy of your willpower. But all of that is a strategy layered over top of an underlying story that you're an imposter. And if we can get to that underlying story and dissolve that, all of this madness that you have to do to make yourself not have to worry about being an imposter becomes wasted energy, right? So ontological work really, it doesn't transcend, it does the other one, I guess, descends or whatever. It underlies everything. It's such a pillar. So I had a lot of clients that just naturally were coming to me and to Bay through that. So that's the first thing that was going on. The second thing was I was getting frustrated, and my frustration was that I developed a leadership team where there was this this like standard. Hey, you're here to have your leadership developed. You're not standing for people anymore, or rather, you're not of service in that kind of like selfless but arrogant way. You're here to do your work. And you also recognize in doing your work, that's going to be what allows you to be of service to people. So rather than being of service being the priority, it was I'm going to do my work and confront my demons, my shadows, create my transformation, and that's how I will be of service. So transformation first and foremost. And whilst I'd created that stand for the team and was like standing over here holding that container, I had a leader owning all of this, the face of this, who in my experience was not stepping into that same stand. So I was now, this is pretty classic. You'll see this in a lot of corporate environments. I had a leader who had become the ceiling. I was standing for this group of leaders to a higher level of leadership than the person that was running the whole thing, Rich. And so for a while, I was just frustrated. Fuck this guy. What's his fucking problem? Oh, I can't believe he's doing, all of that. Um, and then over time, I started to realize what was happening was I was like, why am I at an event that I am actively in resistance to? Like, I've got enough work under my belt. What's going on? And what I realized is, oh, it's time for me to move on. I'm judging him for how he's showing up because that's safer than me stepping into the arena myself and putting myself at risk for other people's judgment. It's easier for me to just hang back and fuck him. Things would be different if I was in charge, but I'm not going to be in charge. So as I raised my rates, I also left the safety of those public intensives. I moved on from the leadership team. I said goodbye. It was convenient timing because Kendra had moved on as well. And let me find a way to put this that's generous. What was being left behind was a context of managing everything that had to be held rather than leading and creating into the unknown. It was a lot more like, let's manage all of the moving parts along with a lot of stress and stuff like that, rather than like, how do we create this as a leadership opportunity? Doesn't mean they didn't call it leadership, but what they were calling it one thing, but doing management, calling it leadership, doing management. So it was a good time for me to depart. The impact of all of this is that I raised my rates and then left the very reliable place, the very reliable structure I'd created to generate clients. And I think that's probably like the most interesting part about this. It's not that I like started doing things vastly different. It's not that I suddenly was like, how do I market to $50,000 people? I didn't hold them any differently at all, and I never have. And when I raised my rates from 50K to 65K and stopped doing a 6-month agreement, I didn't start relating to those. Nowhere along the way do I hold myself out or hold my clients as any different. They're the same people. They might be further along the journey, but internally they're the same people. So I'll come to that a little bit, and I think we'll start to wind down because holy crap, it's almost 10. I got a flight to catch tomorrow. So in leaving Rich's community and leaving my leadership behind, I was leaving that like nice place where I stood out in stark contrast as a leader to everything that was happening, and people wanted that. And that was terrifying. Prior, there'd been like 2 times a year where I was in front or at least around amidst 150 coaches that were thirsty for success and really wanted what I had. Maybe not all of them, but you get the point, right? Like there was a safety there. And for both Bane and I, this was a real moment of like fear. I had a lot of conversations with my coach prior to this where I was really concerned, like, fuck, what am I going to do? How do I guarantee? Please don't change the power. Okay, it didn't. How am I going to guarantee the clients? What am I going to do? So that was the most frightening part about this was like my fear was like, dude, you left this, dude, what are you doing? This is guaranteed. You don't need to like, sure, raise your rates. That's fine, but stay here. This is the place to do that in. If you're going to raise your rate, don't do 2 things at once, right? Do one and stay here for a while. But on some level, and I've been at this point, I've been in this work for probably 8, 9 years. I was very clear. I can't do that. That wouldn't be an integrity with this work. That would be my version of leading a leadership team, but not stepping into my own leadership, right? Then I would be the ceiling. Guys, you got to like get clear on what you want and then go for it. Except for me, it's okay if I halfway do that. It's not going to work, right? So I was just very clear. I had to leave. I had to move on. And Bay was very clear on the same. And so what happened was a great moment of probably 3 months ish, thereabouts, where I don't know what it was like for Bay, but I imagine not that much different. Spent a lot of time talking to my coach. And a lot of time where I was like, I'm really afraid. I feel like I need to do a bunch of marketing right now. And the reason for that would be like, I don't know, I hadn't had a prospect conversation in like 3 weeks or something. Ah, fuck, what do I have to do? I got to do, and then I'd bring it to my coach and and then she would sit with me and not be reactive the way I was reactive. And slowly I would start to see like, there's nothing I need to do. I'm just going to trust this path. And so that was the work, right? Trusting the path, continue to write, continue to share my art into the world the way I have been, continuing to do the work that we've been doing and allow things to progress as they have. We've not, so now I want to go back and read Yana's questions to make sure I'm touching on all the things we've not been doing. So I'll come to the prospective clients in a sec. But what did that bring up for you mentally, but also practically? So practically, it brought up we didn't have a obvious pool from which to fish for clients. Mentally, it brought up a fuck ton of fear about the fact that we did not have an obvious pool from which to fish for clients. How did your approach to quote unquote attracting those clients change, if at all? Not one bit. I've not done anything different. Mostly what's happened is I've just told people sooner what my rates are. And the reason I've done that is to save both of us time. And it's not, it's more that I don't like the feeling of having 4 conversations with someone and then telling them my rates and they're crestfallen. And I also don't like how that feels for me. So the main thing that's happened is I tend to let people know sooner, especially if I'm not sure, if I'm like, is this person really looking for a $500 a month coach? Nothing wrong with that. If that's the budget they have, awesome. I'm going to help them with every fiber of my being find the perfect coach. And by the way, if you're watching this or listening to this after the fact, and you're like, I wish I had someone to help me find, dude, it's me. Get in touch. I'll help you find the perfect coach. I'm committed to you that way. I'm committed to every single person that comes to me. So it's not that if you're not willing to pay my rates, I'm not the coach. Well, I'm not the coach for you, but like it's not that you can't reach out for support. My commitment above all of this is to serve whoever shows up in front of me. When my rate is out of what they're able or willing to pay, then my service is not to work with them. My service is to put them in touch with the best possible person I know. So I talked to myself right on my point. I got to drink some water and see if I can find my way back. Uh, oh, right. Attracting client. Oh, yeah. So what I do is if someone reaches out and they're like, hey, I'd really like to talk about coaching, I often let them know up front now, yeah, no problem at all. Just a heads up. This is what it like the commitment typically looks like for me. It doesn't have to be that way, but I want to make sure, like, is that the level of commitment to your own life that you're interested in? Are you looking there? And what that does is it saves both of us a bunch of time. Some people, I never hear from them again. They don't even respond to that. Awesome. They were not going to be my client anyhow, right? If that scared them off, no problem. Some of them are like, man, I'm not scared off by that, but that rate's like, boy, I want to be a yes to that. I'm just not sure. Awesome. Let's be in a conversation. The people that are really like committed to something are like, fuck, there's no way I can afford that. But what do I do? Let me tell you, let's get on a call together. Let's figure that out. Let's help you find what's going to be the best fit for you. Those people, by the way, that don't stop when my rate is not the only answer for them, those people are the ones I see eventually work with me. I see a lot of people, they're like, oh, I guess not right now, but don't worry, someday I'm going to work with you. I never hear from those people again. And the reason is because they hold me as the only option and then they don't get supported. And hey, guess what? I'm getting supported. And so my life is moving up like this, and they're trying to catch up to me without getting supported. I'm not saying this from arrogance. I'm just saying if you're trying to catch up to someone who is actively engaged in this kind of support while you aren't yourself, you're not going to, because coaching has your life increase exponentially, transformational coaching at least. Whereas not getting supported that way has your life increase arithmetically. So you'll never, exponential curve always outpaces a linear one. So some of those people are like, I can't do that, but man, can you help me? Fuck yeah. I love it when people say, can you help me? I love it when people aren't stopped there. And then finally, some people are like, yeah, I'm up for that conversation. So that's the big shift, is that I'm just letting people know sooner. Look, this is the kind of commitment we're talking about. Is that actually where you're interested in playing? If not, no problem. I'd love to support you anyhow, but I just want to be clear where you stand. And that has them kind of come into a conversation with me. If they're a yes, we're both looking at what in this person's life would be worth this kind of commitment to it, as opposed to me asking, like, what do they want? And then they're really engaging with that question, like, what would I want for $100 a month? Well, I'd probably want to be like slightly happier. It's just there's not much to that conversation. Okay. Other things Yana says, how about the delivery of the work or marketing efforts or anything else at all? I don't do anything different for marketing. I don't market. What I have done since increasing those rates is we started to hire a social media team. And if you've followed me for a while, you've noticed that there's like, you can probably tell, oh, this is like a beautifully articulated post Adam's put together. It's probably not me. I still write all the content, but then my team takes that and they like make it pretty because I'm dumb and I don't have energy for that, right? I'm committed to the clients and to like the art that I can create. I can't do it all. And so we started to like take a lot of that new money that our clients are investing with us to invest further back out. So we don't retain a lot of those increased rates. Our commitment is to be a conduit. We really hold, it's not that we're not irresponsible, right? We're not just flushing money down a toilet. We bring it in, but we save some of it, not crazy amounts, and then we push a lot of it back out. We invest it back continually into the business. And so we started hiring a social media team, but I wouldn't say that like they're really marketing at a new class of person. At no point have I held like the client that hires me at 30K is a different version of a human than the client that hires me at 50K. They're the same person further along the journey of life. A lot of coaches get this wrong because they niche based on the the surface stuff. I only work with teachers that have worked for 20 years. Okay, but where we really want to look in terms of a niche is along like the ontological or spiritual journey of someone. And that journey looks different every step along the way, but it's the same quality of person. So if you ever hear me talk about the smartest person in the room, when they're 20, they're excelling in university. They're probably like creating startups. They're maybe at like a very high level Ivy League school like Stanford. I've had clients from Stanford, for example, stuff like that. They're probably not, they're probably pretty like my stuff works because it does, and they're not really present to what's not working. So I've had some clients at that level. And then once they get into their 30s, they've probably got at least one really successful startup under their belt, along with a few failures. They're probably like graduated law school and about a few 3 or 4 years into like the practice of law. They're like working as a doctor. They've just started, et cetera, et cetera. And then a little bit further, they've made a bunch of investments. They're really reliable to have created a bunch of money, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, I can need like every step along this path is my people. So I don't really going from 30K to 50K just means that my people, it's the same person. They're just a little further along the path. And I don't market to them or even speak to them any differently. I'm always speaking to the same person. They're just picking me up along the journey. But if I talk about like when I was in my 20s, I was certain that everyone else was a fucking moron and that I had figured life out better than them. They can relate to that every step along the way, as long as they're at their 20s and then beyond. And so there was no real shift in how I marketed or spoke to those people. I'm always just speaking to the heart of the matter, the ontological soul of this person. Hello, Michelle. It's nice to see you. I'm glad to hear that. Michelle prefers this happening in the evening. Well, it's probably not going to be a habit, but I'm glad to hear it. Okay, the delivery of the work. As I've increased my rates, it allows me to offer more to my clients. So when I raised my rates from 50K to 65K, one of the things I really wanted to do was just automatically, if my clients were interested, bring them for free down to sit in ayahuasca ceremony with me. That work, I believe, dovetails profoundly with transformational coaching. I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's kind of potent because ayahuasca fills a lot of the gaps in coaching, and coaching, transformational, fills a lot of the gaps in ayahuasca. So there's just some real beautiful magic that happens there. And so I was like, great. So part of the way I'm going to do that is any client that signs up from me with me from now on, that's included. They can come do that for free. They got to fly down there and they got to fly back, and the rest is covered. So that is available now because I'm charging a higher rate, but they don't have to do it. It's optional. and there's no refund. They don't get a discount if they don't do that. It's allowed, it's available, but they don't have to engage me with it. And that's just how it is. So that delivery of work has changed. And much like I'm down here in Philly for this week doing an on-site with a client, I can make those kind of offers, right? So when I'm working with someone, because of that kind of amount of money I'm charging, I can be fluid, right? I'm not concerned about missing a week with, oh my God, if I take a week off, my clients are gonna, no, we're playing at a level now where we're fluid and flexible, and we don't have to really worry about that stuff. So it allows me, probably more importantly, to be more flexible with what I offer. So that's how I would say the delivery of the work has changed. Andrew, you're saying you really appreciated me sharing where I am as far as discussing my rates. Oftentimes, Andrew says he'll be 3 to 4 calls before that point, and it can be depleting for both sides. Yeah. Yeah. What Andrew's talking about is like he won't share his rates with someone until 3 to 4 calls in. And brother, I know what you mean. Like there was this guy who'd been a referral from a friend of mine. He was an entrepreneur and based out of New York. And I could totally see us working together, and we like kept having these conversations. I told him my rate, and then he was like, and then like it just went on forever, and I was like angry with him. And through the support of my coach, I was angry because of the amount of time I devoted to him. But as she started to support me, I could see like, oh, I actually could tell like 3 calls before this, he probably wasn't the one, but I was resisting sharing my rate because I didn't want to scare him off. That's no good. And so I've just gotten committed to like offering this to someone as a gift, right? Like, look, this is the bar. Do you want to play at this level? It's okay if you don't. There's no requirement, right? I don't need you to. I'm okay if you don't. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. So what did it bring up for you mentally and practically? I've shared that. Are the prospective clients different now compared to when you charge less? Right. I think that's the last. Oh, so here's a funny thing that I notice happens. Before I raise my rates, there's usually a point where I start to like engage with a higher level of like activity. When I say higher level, I mean more expensive. So these days, to go to Rhythmia, where Bay and I go, it's a 5K US. It's actually almost 6K these days. 6K US just to attend. And then in addition to that, there's a flight there and back. So it's probably costing us $8,000, we'll say, each to go. So if you want to do the math, that's like every time we go down, that's 16K that we're investing. And then now, how often are we going? We're pretty committed to going like every couple of months. So that's like a crazy amount of money, right? 6 times 16K, what is that? That's about $100,000 that we're investing into that. But don't even worry about that for now. Let's just look at one instance of that. As I go to do that, I've invested 8K of my money or my company's money to do that. But what that does is it puts me in a position, a place for a week with 100 other people that have made that exact same kind of investment. And so the first time I did this was terrifying. I was like, this is bonkers. I could ish afford it, right? Ish. And then I came back and had a $30,000 tax bill and I was like, fuck. But I could ish afford it. It doesn't, why the reason I'm saying ish is because it was scary. There's like fear for me doing that, but I could do it. And when I went down there, it meant that there was more people around me that were a yes to that conversation. The conversation being, look, this is what it costs to work with me. Are you actually interested in playing at that kind of level in your life? And then it just so happened, in fact, the client I'm here in Philly with, I met the first time I ever went down to sit in ayahuasca ceremony. Got into conversation. He happened to be someone that had made that same investment. So what a lot of people do is they keep fishing in the small pond, hoping they're going to catch a giant fish. And their story for themselves is, I'm going to move to the bigger pond when I catch the bigger fish. You can only catch the bigger fish by going to the bigger pond, and you will never be ready for that. So there's, in my experience, there's always this moment where we have to do the thing before we're ready. That's the only way it happens. Think of it like this. When are you ready to ride a bike? After you've ridden it a bunch. The only way you can get to the point where you're ready to ride a bike is by getting on it first, not being ready, falling down a ravine, hating your bike, and then repeat. Right? So that's how this works. This is no different than riding a bike. So there's a point, really a life. There's a practice of being willing to like keep leaning in to where I'm not ready. And that's how I and Bay have committed to living our life, because that's what we're committed to supporting other people to do. You don't have to do that. That's optional. But if you're really committed to like the transformational path, it's about getting on the next bike, whatever that bike looks like, a one wheel, a snowboard, whatever, right? Going to an event that you don't feel you can fully afford yet, that's edgy, and like, I'm not yet ready, but I want to ride a bike. So I'm going to put myself into a situation where I'm forced to ride a bike. And that's what we just do over and over and over again. So that, I think, is probably the most important to this. Like, do we market to people differently? No. The way we market our business is we go to an event and we be. So just this evening, I was downstairs talking to someone, the bartender, chatting to her about life, coaching, all of that. She's not going to become a client, but that's how my marketing looks. I just go, show up in the world, and be with people. And as time has gone on, I've invested to allow myself to go to events that look cool to me. Not that I think I should be at. Fuck that. Cool events where I want to be at higher and higher levels of investment, and then I just be with people at those events. Okay, it's pretty good. Michelle says, revolve your life around me, please. Well, I'm doing it tonight, so enjoy it. Savor this. And I think that's all there is for this. I don't see any other questions or comments, so I did pretty good. Wow, hour and 36 minutes. That's crazy. I can't believe I did that. I'll finish up by sharing today the structure of this time with my client and his people. We've been here 3 days. So the first day, this was great the way we laid it out. First day, they started with a group meeting, and then I had about an hour and a half to like basically introduce ontological leadership. He just said, you've got an hour, do whatever you want to do. I trust you. I was like, awesome. Thanks for that. I'm terrified by your trust. So I was like, okay, I'm going to lay the foundation for ontological leadership. And what I basically did was start to speak. I got quite scared at first. I was like, what do I do? Doing, I don't, these people are stern. They were kind of a little bit tight in their energy. And I was like, And so, excuse me, the first day, I basically laid out the model that you see in Who Do You Think You Are? If you've got my book, I kind of started to go through that. And it was cool because you could tell they started to be like, yeah, I can relate to that. He's talking about brilliance and he's talking about all the morons, and that's super. I get that. The second day, my client was like, all right, I'm going to give you like 3 hours here. Do you feel like you'll be able to fill 3 hours? And like, uh, 2 weeks ago, I was like, or 2 months ago, I was like, no problem at all. And then the day before, I was like, fuck, why did I say yes? And then the day of, that 3 hours flew by. And this group was really engaged, which was fun. And then today, every single member of his leadership team booked in an hour with me. So I've been coaching from 9 a.m. until about 5 p.m., which is a lot, pretty much nonstop for 6 hours with a brief break for lunch. So I'm tired, but I'm like worked by the work. I'm really juiced by it. And that's the best kind of experience, is when this work works us. So thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew says, cool to hear that experience. Thanks everyone for all of you that have like kind of come in, hung out, the revolving door. We had a bit of a revolving door tonight, and that's totally beautiful. You're probably as tired as I am, although it's only 7 p.m. back in the West where I think most of my audience is. So what the fuck, guys? Get your shit together. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the question, Yana. I really appreciate it. I love you guys, and I hope you have an amazing weekend. And I will fly back to you to the West Coast, to Vancouver Island, the best place on earth, tomorrow morning. Peace.